Howdy y'all, today we're going to be changing the power steering pump in this 2007 Pontiac G6 with the 3.5 liter engine.
Alrighty, so when they dropped the car off a couple days ago, they told me that the power steering pump was whining, but they also just had the rack pinion changed in it. So they were thinking maybe there was just some air that needed to be bled out of it or so. So I actually filled it up with power steering fluid. I turned the wheel back and forth a bunch of times to try to bleed any air out of it. It still continued to whine. So I was sitting for about 2 days now, and I noticed a bunch of power steering fluid actually leaked out on the driveway back there. So something's definitely leaking. I don't know if it has to do with when they put the rack in or the pump itself is leaking, but it kind of does look like the pump's leaking somewhat because there is a bunch of some kind of fluid that's all over the inside of here. So I'm pretty sure that it is coming from the pump. So before we get started, we're going to go ahead and check out this replacement pump here. I'm not really too sure where they got it from, possibly O'Reilly's, because that's the power steering fluid they had in the back with it. So yeah, we're just going to check this out real quick before we actually take off the old one to make sure we know what we're getting into. So it seems like there's 3 mounting bolts that go right there. Looks like one of the lines go here, and I'm pretty sure the reservoir clips into there. So just to give us a game plan on what we're doing. The sticker actually came in the box with the pump. Don't void your warranty, always flush the system, use OE recommended fluid. So yeah, we got the O'Reilly's power steering fluid. Down here it says meets performance requirements of OE manufacturers, so we should be good with that. So before we start pulling this pump out, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to remove this air box. This way we get a little room here so we can flex the AC line over. Yeah, I can see the 3 little bolts already in between the pulley here, but before we get to pulling those bolts out, we got to get a wrench on the tensioner pulley down there, let the slack off the belt so we can remove the belt. So to remove this air box, we got to take out one of the bolts there, another one down there. You have to pop this little clip out of here, and this other bolt was missing, but yeah, you got to take that one out, remove the wiring harness from the sensor, and loosen the hose clamp. So now we're going to release the tension on the belt to slip the belt off. Down there on the tensioner pulley arm, I got my socket wrench slid in, and all you got to do, there's a notch in there for the head of your socket wrench just to pop in, and then you just give her a tug, and it releases the tension on the belt. So next we're going to take out these 3 1/2-inch bolts. It seems like I can get the first 2 out with the longer socket, but got that one loose. And this bottom one, might have to use this shorter socket. Nope, it's not letting me get in there. So we're going to have to take this motor mount out here. So I think we're going to have to get a jack under the car with a piece of 2x4 to go across the oil pan. You can see the oil pan there. Just want to get a short piece of 2x4 is all, just to go across the bottom of the oil pan. Just want to make sure once you got it placed in there that you're not going to be crushing any sensors or having any kind of weak spot where it's going to damage anything. Now that we got the jack placed under the oil pan, just to hold it up, and we take these bolts out. So we got to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts out to get this motor mount out the way so we can access that 1 bolt for the power steering pump. Alright, now we're able to access that bottom bolt. Once you get your 3 bolts out, should just be able to lift right up, as so. So we got it lifted up, and yeah, it's definitely leaking from that power steering pump. You can see all that fluid down there leaking down. And even down here, when you touch the bottom of it, there's a handful of power steering fluid. Alright, so next step is we got to remove the power steering line right there. and take off this hose, but we're gonna lay a nice big rag down to catch any loose fluid that comes out. This way we don't douse down the engine even more than it is. So we got the two lines off of this contraption. Now we got to figure out how to get that pulley off. Actually looks to me like the pulley's pressed on. So to remove the reservoir from the pump itself, you have to remove these little clips here. So all I did was took my screwdriver, I slid it in between the pulley, I caught the edge of the clip and just took a hammer and then tapped the back side of the screwdriver, and it literally just popped right off. As easy as that. And then the reservoir just slides right out. Now the whole reason this was leaking, it might have been because of the failing reservoir seal right there. But with the new pump, you get the two new seals, one for the reservoir and one for the pressure line. I went down to the local auto parts store. I went and did the Loaner tool deal and got the power steering and alternator pulley remover and install kit. So I got out the pieces of the kit I'm going to need to remove and install the pulley. Alright, simple as that. So to reinstall the pulley now, I got to put the pulley on the shaft there, and then you got to take one of these little threaded pieces that match up with the threads inside your pulley and put it on the other piece of this tool. This kit also comes with this bearing. Slide that on there with this washer, and I'm going by these directions in the on the kit itself. But we're going to try this out and see how it works. I never used one of these before, so first time for everything. Get your wrench and your socket back on here, and you do the reverse turning as you were before to drive it back down. So the threads on both of these end pieces that go into the puller piece tool here seem both to be stripped out pretty good. I tried the smaller one and it literally just came right out. This taller one has a little bit thicker threads. We're going to try this one, and we're going to use a impact socket to try to counter the difference. The first kit I got was from Advanced Auto. It was damaged and wasn't working, so I got this other kit from O'Reilly's, and it seems a lot simpler. So this is all we need, is this one bolt and this nut bearing, and we should be good to get it pressed back on. And that's it. Time to reinstall. So next we're going to install the new O-ring that came with the pump back onto the reservoir so we can fit the reservoir back onto the pump. Then we're going to reinstall these little clips to hold the reservoir to the pump. Which apparently you got to make sure you put them on right because they are opposites with the groove. You got to make sure that groove fits into here. And just tap them down. And that's it. Back in the car she goes. They also give you a new O-ring for the high pressure line. Make sure you change that out. And we can reinstall the line. And also, before you tighten up that high pressure line, make sure you got the line sitting in the correct spot. So we're going to test fit it before we tighten it up to make sure we know where we're going to have that line sitting. Alrighty, we finally got this pump back in. tightened up the high pressure line. I actually just got to put that clamp back on over here. We got the 3 bolts in and tightened up, and we re-put on the serpentine belt. So now we can reinstall the motor mount. Alright, we got the 5 motor mount bolts re-secured, ready to go. Now all we got to do is throw in the air box. And we are finished.
Oh, all right, finally finished. That was a greasy mess under that hood, but we got it done. So I bled the air out of the system by just filling up the reservoir all the way, turning the wheel back and forth once, which pretty much sucked all the fluid out, turned the car off, refilled the reservoir again, turned the wheel back and forth 10 times or so, and it was still whining, turned the car off. I let it sit for a couple minutes, started it back up, turned the wheel back and forth about 10 more times, still whining some, turned it off again, checked the reservoir, needed a little more, topped it off, started back up again after letting it sit for a few minutes, turned it back and forth, and then, yeah, after doing that 3 or 4 times, I eventually got all the air bled out the system, and it stopped, the pump stopped whining.
From what I've seen online, some manufacturers, you have to actually bleed the system by taking off the reservoir cap, installing some kind of other cap with a fitting on it, and then drawing a vacuum while you're turning the wheel back and forth. And also you'd have to do that a few times to get all the air out. But again, I was able to do it the way I did it, so I think we're good to go.
All right, y'all, that's it for this one. Peace and love, keep it real, and I'll see you on the next one.